In 1769, a Māori warrior named Te Maro stood on the shores of Poverty Bay, watching something impossible approach. A floating structure larger than any building he'd ever seen was drifting toward his people. When a small boat detached and men with pale skin came ashore, Te Maro and his companions did what warriors do. They challenged the intruders with ritual displays and threats. The strangers responded by pointing strange wooden sticks at them. Thunder cracked, smoke filled the air, and Te Maro's friend collapsed, blood spreading across sand, killed by something he never saw coming. For cultures still using stone tools, bone weapons, and wooden clubs, the first encounter with gunpowder wasn't just a technological shock. It was a fundamental assault on everything they understood about warfare, death, and the natural order of the universe. Imagine your entire military tradition built around facing your enemy eye to eye. Every weapon you've ever known, the war club, the spear, the stone-tipped arrow, requires proximity, requires you to see death coming and respond. Your warriors train from childhood in the intricate dance of close combat. Honor comes from meeting your opponent face to face. Courage is measured by standing firm when someone rushes toward you with a raised weapon. Now someone points a stick at you from 50 paces away. There's a crack of thunder, a belch of smoke and flame, and your brother warrior drops dead beside you. No warning, no chance to dodge or parry. No opportunity to display the martial skills you've spent decades perfecting. Just instantaneous death delivered from a distance by what appears to be dark sorcery. The psychological impact was devastating. Aboriginal Australian accounts describe the first musket demonstrations as thundersticks that could kill without touching. Pacific Islanders initially interpreted gunfire as a manifestation of supernatural power, gods or spirits channeling lightning through their weapons. Some Maori communities believed the smoke itself was deadly, that Europeans possessed captured thunder spirits that obeyed their commands. This wasn't an irrational response. It was the only framework available for processing technology that violated every physical principle they understood. In a world where all violence was intimate and visible, firearms represented something beyond comprehension. Death that arrived faster than thought, louder than any natural sound, accompanied by sulfurous smoke that resembled volcanic fury. The first contact experiences varied wildly depending on the temperament of the European commanders and the responses of indigenous peoples. Captain James Cook understood the terrifying power imbalance he carried in his ship's armories. His journals revealed genuine concern about the psychological impact of firearms. 3 things made them our fast friends, he wrote about Tahitians: their own good-natured disposition, gentle treatment on our part, and the dread of our firearms. Cook recognized that fear of muskets could be leveraged for peaceful trade and exploration, or it could trigger catastrophic violence if mishandled. At Poverty Bay, his first violent encounter in New Zealand, Cook ordered his men to fire on a fishing canoe whose occupants resisted being taken hostage. 2 or 3 Māori died. That evening, both Cook and naturalist Joseph Banks reflected in their journals on what Banks called the most disagreeable day my life has yet seen. But not all explorers shared Cook's restraint. Throughout the Pacific and Australia, countless first contact scenarios ended in bloodshed when nervous colonists interpreted defensive gestures as aggression, or when indigenous warriors tested the stranger's resolve. The noise and smoke of firearms became psychological weapons as important as the lead balls themselves. Aboriginal oral traditions describe warriors fleeing not just from casualties, but from the terrifying sensory assault. The thunderous reports echoing off hills, the acrid smoke obscuring vision, the incomprehensible mechanism of death itself. For warriors whose entire tactical framework revolved around reading an opponent's movements, anticipating strikes, and responding with trained reflexes, firearms rendered centuries of accumulated martial wisdom nearly obsolete in a single generation. What's remarkable isn't that Stone Age cultures were traumatized by firearms. What's remarkable is how quickly some adapted. The Maori provide the most dramatic case study. When European traders arrived in New Zealand in the early 1800s, Māori chiefs immediately grasped the strategic implications of muskets. They didn't worship the weapons or see them as magic for long. They saw them as tools, devastating tools that rewrote the rules of warfare. The result was the Musket Wars, a series of conflicts from the 1810s through 1830s that killed between 20 and 40,000 Māori. Northern tribes with access to European traders acquired muskets first. Chiefs like Hongihika armed hundreds of warriors with firearms and launched devastating raids against traditional enemies still fighting with wooden weapons. The technological disparity was apocalyptic. Warriors who had spent lifetimes mastering the taiaha, the traditional fighting staff, in Miran the War Club, found themselves cut down by opponents they never reached. But this wasn't simple conquest by superior technology. Within a generation, most Māori tribes had acquired muskets through trade, and the strategic balance shifted again. Māori didn't just adopt European firearms, they adapted their entire way of war around them. They modified their traditional fortifications, the PA, to incorporate firing positions and trenches designed to counter musket fire. They developed new tactical formations, new battle rhythms, new concepts of honor that accommodated killing from a distance. By the 1860s, when Māori fought British colonial troops in the New Zealand Wars, they were employing sophisticated guerrilla tactics that frustrated one of the world's most powerful militaries. They built elaborate defensive systems with underground bunkers, interlocking fields of fire, and concealed escape routes. British commanders found themselves outmaneuvered by warriors their predecessors had dismissed as primitive savages armed with wooden clubs. But firearms inflicted damage beyond the battlefield. The introduction of guns fundamentally destabilized traditional power structures. In most indigenous societies, military strength derived from numbers, training, and accumulated skill. A warrior's status came from decades of experience and proven courage. Firearms democratized death. A 15-year-old with a musket could kill a master warrior before that lifetime of training even mattered. In Aboriginal Australia, the technological gap was even more severe. Aboriginal peoples had never developed bows and arrows, relying instead on spears, clubs, and the boomerang for hunting and warfare. When British colonists arrived with firearms, the disparity wasn't just technological, it was conceptual. There was no intermediate technology, no gradual escalation. Aboriginal resistance fighters like Pumulwuy led guerrilla campaigns against British settlers around Sydney for more than a decade. They used intimate knowledge of the land and hit-and-run tactics to counter the massive gap in firepower. But against an enemy who could kill from a distance no spear could reach, resistance could only last so long. Pumulwuy was shot several times during the fighting, once in the head where the lead remained lodged for years. Yet he continued to lead his people until he was finally killed in 1802. His skull was sent to England as a curiosity. The message was unmistakable. Stone Age warriors could be brave, tactically brilliant, and resilient beyond comprehension. But courage alone doesn't stop bullets. The long-term psychological impacts rippled through indigenous cultures for generations. In time, oral traditions transformed. Songs and stories that once celebrated hand-to-hand combat prowess began incorporating the trauma of facing firearms. Some Pacific Island cultures developed cargo cult-like responses, attempting to manufacture wooden replicas of guns or perform rituals to gain the technology's power. Others internalized the technological gap as evidence of spiritual inferiority. If the pale strangers commanded thunder itself, what did that say about the strength of traditional gods? In Papua New Guinea's highlands, some communities remained uncontacted until the 1930s. When Australian patrol officers walked into valleys where people still used stone axes, the reaction repeated the pattern from 150 years earlier in coastal regions. The psychological shock of firearms combined with steel tools, cloth, and other manufactured goods created a profound cultural crisis. Within a single generation, Stone Age communities found themselves forcibly dragged into the 20th century, with all the trauma and dislocation that entailed. The encounter between Stone Age warriors and muskets wasn't just a technological mismatch. It was a collision between entirely different conceptions of warfare, honor, and death itself. For cultures where combat was intimate, ritualized, and comprehensible, firearms represented a kind of aggression that violated the fundamental rules of reality. You couldn't parry thunder. You couldn't dodge invisible death. You couldn't meet your killer's eyes and die with honor when you were already dead before you knew you'd been targeted. Some cultures adapted with remarkable speed and sophistication. Others never recovered from the initial psychological shock. But all of them learned the same hard lesson. In warfare, the gap between stone and steel isn't measured in inches. It's measured in the distance between your warrior standing, ready for honorable combat, and his corpse on the ground before the smoke clears. The thunder sticks had spoken, and they rewrote history with noise, smoke, and lead. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe to our channel. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.